Moon is here now, and let's go to the phones here at 556-1250 and say hello to former State Senator Sherry Marchink. Hey, Sherry.
Hey, how are you? Hey, Dan.
There you go. Talk to Dan. I'm getting out of this.
Hey, Sherry.
How are you?
I am just wonderful.
You know, I did a co-hosting of a show with Scott Kaysen on Monday afternoons there.
Yeah.
So you and I cross paths inside that plush studio sometimes.
Wasn't that a beautiful studio?
But I want you to know that aside from shaping talk radio in Charleston, you also helped shape the political climate.
You know,
quite a bit.
I heard that. I don't know how much I did, but I remember Senator McConnell, Glenn McConnell, said to me one time, said he was a little in awe, a little jealous of me. And I said, "What are you talking about, Senator?" I said, "My gosh, you're the Senate President pro tem, the second most powerful man in state government. Arguably, maybe the most. I don't. But what do you mean you jealous?" He said, "Well," he said, "listen, you have, during the talk show portion, you have 2 hours every day to get the listeners to have their ear, Democrats and Republicans, I might add." And he said, "You know, politicians would kill almost to have the ear of everybody in both parties, for 2 hours a day. My goodness, to influence the people out there." And he said, it's pretty powerful.
And that, what's funny now, Dan, is now sometimes it's hard to get politicians to come on the radio to talk, to answer direct questions. They feel more insulated by not having that direct one-on-one, and many times they refuse to respond to calls and stuff. Many of them, like Senator McConnell, will be more than happy to step up and answer questions.
Sherry, I remember I had no problem ever getting hold of you.
Well, you had trouble getting rid of me, didn't you?
Well, yeah, but we had a great relationship, and I think the relationship was this. You correct me if I'm wrong, but a lot of people kid the politicians and say, "How can you tell when a politician's lying because their mouth's moving," and this kind of stuff, and that may be true. I don't know, but
it's awfully hard to talk without moving your mouth.
It really is. But my deal was this. All right, I know what politics is. I know what it is. I know what it's about. We all play politics in our everyday life, whether we're elected to office or not. Give you an example. Remember the old commercials on TV that you got to tell somebody they got bad breath? Well, somebody needs to tell them that. Somebody's got to be the purveyor of bad news. It may not be what people want to hear, but somebody's got to do it. And
you did a good job with it.
Well, I liken that to politics. You stand up, you do what's right, and you're not going to please everybody.
This feels like nowadays politics are more about the party and the individual than the people that they represent.
I think it's coming back around.
I hope so.
I hope it will.
Sherry, you remember talking with Dan though many times on the radio.
Oh yeah. Talked to him a lot of times, and it was always fun. Well, no, it wasn't. I can't say it was always fun. Sometimes it was a little bit tough, but all in all, it was fun. I mean, it was an enjoyable experience, and didn't have to worry about where Dan stood.
I let you know in a hurry, didn't I?
Oh,
yeah. Sherry, that's the great thing about this radio station is that for many, many decades, it has served as a community forum for the Low Country to talk to the movers and shakers and to talk about things that matter in people's lives. And here we are celebrating 70 years, and we continue to try to service the local community. Sherry, thank you for joining us this morning.
Hey, let me tell you just one thing.
Sure.
Not only was that that hour show that I did once a week, some of the most fun I've ever had, but back in the 70s, I worked with the station. I was a paid employee then doing some sales. This is back before Dan came around, I guess.
Yeah. Wow.
Some experience with the station, but great to hear from y'all.
Sherry,
my pleasure.
Great to talk to you. That is former State Senator Sherry Marchink joining us here on the Morning Buzz. Let me read this instant message because this kind of encapsulates what we have a lot of people who want to talk to Dan on the air at 556-1250. This one just simply says, "Thanks for the memories of a time when cares were much fewer, when one could trust their neighbors, and when having a name meant more than it does today. I grew up listening to the mighty WTMA, and the names you guys are throwing out were staples of my childhood and young adult years. Thanks to Dan Moon for his hours of entertainment and information, to John Quincy for looking these people up, and to you for hosting them on the show." A lot of people,
nice.
And Dan, I've come to realize this, they know you. They feel like you're a friend of theirs. They know your life. They know you as a person, as a friend in their life, not as some disembodied voice. But
listen, you got to do that, Richard. I noticed you've shared a lot of your life with the audience as well, and I did too. I'll never forget. My wife and I wound up raising one of our grandchildren, Now we have 2 more we're raising. But at any rate, we raised a grandchild from the time he was a year and a half old. He's 22 now. And I think we did a halfway decent job with it. But I shared that because it was so unusual, I thought, at my age at that time, to be raising a young child. I mean, my goodness, my wife and I thought those days were long gone. And so I would share. And then I found out there were an awful lot of people out there going through the same identical thing that I was. I shared that with them. I shared the fact that I remember one day I was out on Highway 52 between Goose Creek and Monk's Corner. I was walking along the highway picking up, I guess you could do it in those days, glass bottles for deposit in order to get enough money to put gas in the car to go find work somewhere. And I'll never forget the most embarrassing thing was somebody went by and blew the horn and turned around and came back and said, Dan, what? I used to be on television. I was news director of Channel 2. I was a quote-unquote star in radio and television. And this guy turned around and came, what are you doing out here? What are you doing? Well, I'm trying to make a living here. What? Yeah. And it was, but until you've been down, it's hard to be humble.
Tom in Goose Creek says, I have more than 20 collector's coffee mugs thanks to Dan Moon, including one with his face on it.
Listen, I'm drinking out of a TMA mug right now. I brought one in this morning.
Let me ask you a couple. I'm gonna roll through some phone calls here real quick. But how's your health? How you doing nowadays?
Best health I've been in many years. I smoked for 46 years of my life, Richard, and about 5 years ago now, shortly after I left here, I gave them up. And
kudos to you.
Never picked one up again. And this thing about people having to get all kind of help and everything, that's wonderful if that's what it takes. But no help, just threw them down.
And you enjoy working as the public information officer for the Berkeley County Sheriff's Department?
I love working up there.
He was flashing his badge earlier, folks. Let me just roll through some phone calls here. A lot of people want to say hello and thanks and everything. I'm just going to step back and let you talk to Dan Moon, starting with Roger west of the Ashley. Roger, good morning.
Dad, it's Roger the TV man.
Oh, my gosh, that's a voice. Roger the TV man. Yeah. Hey, buddy.
How's everything? Excuse me.
You still work on TVs?
I'm still running my business and everything, and just want to let you know, I listened to WTMA. When I was down in Savannah, Georgia, Savannah Beach, my home, we had a clear shot of WTMA. Beautiful.
Hey,
right there on the ocean. And
Roger, listen, that's a voice from the past. Thank you very much for calling in.
Roger, thanks.
I still have all your mugs, too.
Roger, thanks for the buzz. I was saying Randy because there's Randy and Latson to say hello to Dan Moon. Randy, go ahead.
Hey, Dan, it's nice to hear that voice on my radio again.
Hey, Randy.
I got to meet you on your last remote that you done. That was the first and only time I got to meet you, and it sure was a pleasure. And I got one of those mugs also.
Hey, Randy, thanks for the buzz, Randy. Let me go to Gigi in Somerville. Gigi, good morning. Thanks for the buzz. Say hello to Dan Moon.
Hey, Dan, it's Gigi with Tri-County Elite Cheerleaders.
Oh, my goodness. I'll never forget the first time Gigi called in. I thought Gigi was a kook. I never told you this, Gigi, but Gigi was calling in to promote her cheerleading school or squad of cheerleaders, but she was so passionate about it, so dedicated to it. I said, go for it.
She still is.
Yeah.
Yes, so I still am, and I still make them do community service. But I wanted to thank you for your years of service to the Low Country, and I terribly miss hearing your voice every morning. I like Richard, but terribly miss your soothing, calming ways, and
well, listen,
I should wish you all the very best.
That's very kind of you to say that. I really appreciate it. Don't get me wrong, but I'll tell you, like I told somebody here recently, you asked me, Dan, do you ever think about getting back into broadcasting? Yes, I do. Do you think you ever would? No, I don't.
That's why Dan Moon's a smart man. Gigi, thanks for the buzz.
Right.
I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
I see Michael and Larry and Pat and Big Bubba on hold, and so much talk, so little time. But you know what? You can talk to Dan Moon if you win tickets to our 70th birthday party. We can give you a chance, and we'll wrap this up here in a moment. Here as our 70th birthday celebration continues on the day 20 years ago today when WTMA became a talk radio station. WTMA News Time is 9:55.
Rocky D.